Welcome to the Mission After podcast, where we help veterans discover and execute on the most important mission of their lives. I'm your host, Mike Bledsoe, and our guest today is Gayle Anders, a business continuity leader with over 20 years of experience, currently managing business continuity for Netflix's global operations. Gayle's innovative approach has been internationally recognized for its effectiveness and strong ROI. Before joining Netflix, Gayle progressed through leadership roles in the United States Marine Corps, focusing on global operations, crisis management, continuity of operations, and disaster recovery. The discipline, teamwork, and attention to detail from his Marine Corps experience continue to influence his ability to ensure the robustness of business continuity plans and foster resilient organizational structure and culture. By the end of this episode, you'll discover three major takeaways: the importance of humility and continuous learning in navigating the corporate world. 2, the value of leveraging the diverse skill set and mindset cultivated in the military and the civilian landscape. And 3, the significance of adaptability, financial prudence, and maintaining a balance between work and family life for personal fulfillment and happiness. But before we dive in, I want to tell you about our new resource available at the missionafter.org. It's called The 10 Surprising Military Habits That Are Sabotaging Your Career and Your Life. This guide will help you identify and overcome those habits, so be sure to download it at the missionafter.org. Now let's get into the conversation with Gayle Anders. All right, we got Gayle Anders here, and you've got to make a proclamation here at the beginning of the show, I think, which might even just entice people from the get-go.
Oh yeah, no worries. Yeah, so it's great to be on the show. Thank you for having me, Mike. The little declaration I got to make is that anything we talk about today are my views and not a representation of Netflix, which is the company that I currently work for.
Right on. I think everyone's heard of Netflix. I think Netflix gets a bit of all of our paychecks every month. It's like the non-negotiable, you know? It's like Netflix took over. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. So, yeah, I would love to hear. We can just start here, which is tell us a bit about where you came from, because you're retired. You did a full run.
Yes.
And in the Marine Corps, and then you transitioned to Netflix. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience in the military and how you were able to transfer that over into something that sounds really cool? Because we did have a chat last week. Really cool at Netflix.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I spent 20 years in the Marine Corps. 18 years of that was as an infantryman. And then my last 2 years, I was a first sergeant serving at Wounded Warrior Battalion. And I'll kind of start with the infantry part then, because I feel like both experiences were very impactful on who I was as an individual, as a man, as a husband, as a father, etc. As an infantryman, I was just always one of those dudes that was always in a position where my boss was either being fired or being injured or whatever the case may be. And for some reason, they were like, "Hey, Anders, take it and run with it." I was always serving at least 1 to 2 pay grades above my current pay grade. And so in that, I had to mature very, very quickly, and I had to be able to hold conversations with very senior individuals. One of the things that I would usually do is, I recognized very early on that officers got a lot of, kneecap to kneecap time with their superior officers, and they would have like book clubs and book reviews, and they would read something about Lincoln or some general in the Civil War, and then they would talk about it as like a tactical decision game. Like, hey, if you had the same composition of this general, like what decisions would you have made, or just that kind of engagement I got really curious about it. So anytime I saw one of my officers with a book, I'd go get the same book and I'd read it. And what that did is it allowed me to have better conversations with them, because I could see where they were approaching certain things from different times. One of the most impactful, 2 combat deployments to Iraq, 1 combat deployment off the coast of Africa, chasing pirates. And then the other 5 deployments were all security partnerships with a number of different Asian and Middle Eastern countries. But
were you in Djibouti?
Yes, I was in Djibouti for.
I've been to Djibouti. It's one of those.
Liminaire or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I remember my first was it second deployment. I'm like 23 years old, and it's like, all right, what are we gonna go do? It's like pirates. I was like, I'm like 23 years old. I'm like, there's fucking pirates out there. Like all I knew was like Pirates of the Caribbean, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. No, when we got the mission brief, I was like, wait, what do you mean pirates? Like, how are these little dinghy boats taking down? Like, what boats are they attacking? Like, I was so caught off guard because the concept of pirates was, wooden ships with sails, and no, it's a bunch of dudes in this small boat with RPGs and AKs, and they're literally taking down container ships, 1,000 times bigger than their little dinghy boats.
yeah.
Yeah, that was wild to me. It was wild. Yeah, and there's just nothing you can do during the day except for stay in the shade when you're actually in Djibouti because it's just excessively hot. At least it was
The
during
night
the
the
time.
nightlife is poor.
Yeah, you really can't do nothing except for work out, which is great for me. But
Right.
yeah.
Anyways, yeah.
Yeah. So those are like more or less the deployments that I did. But one of the most impactful positions or things that I had is I got to Okinawa, Japan for permanent duty station, and I checked in and I relieved the corporal. So at this time I'm a staff sergeant. I show up to a company and I was to be the training chief for the company or whatever. I relieved the corporal and I asked the corporal like, "Hey man, like where's the dude that I'm relieving?" He goes, "Oh, I'm the guy." I said, "Wait a minute, if a corporal can do this, I'm not doing this as a staff sergeant." So without any knowledge or understanding of what a division is, because I was very much at the tactical level up to this point in my career, I walked up to 3rd Marine Division's operations chief and master gunnery sergeant, who was the senior O3 for the division, infantryman. I'm sorry for anybody who doesn't know what O3 is, but anyways, I walked into his office. He did not know who I was, and I said, "Hey, Master Guns, like check this out. Like I'm not this dude. I'm not a staff sergeant just going to relieve a corporal. Like I can do more for you." And it just at the time, somebody at JWTC, a master sergeant, had just got in trouble and was relieved. And he's like, "Hey, are you good to go to JWTC, Jungle Warfare Training Center, and be the operations chief?" I said, "I have no idea what JWTC is, but sure, I'll go do that." So I went up there, and it was 17,000 acres, and I was the senior enlisted dude for the entire camp. I went by, my entire staff, my cadre, were all with the deployment. So every 6 months, I was rotating 6 to 12 people on staff, and I only had 35 people on staff. So it was basically rinse, recycle, repeat. But I thought we could do better, so we did. We revamped the curriculum. We incorporated new curriculum for leaders, for tactics, et cetera, et cetera. At the time, it was the only jungle environment that the Marine Corps had to do jungle operations and tactics. So I took that as like my ownership to basically say, okay, if this is going to be the thing, then let it be the thing, where we all learn how to fight inside the tree line. That turned out to be somebody published something that I did in some article, and the Master Guns happened to be reading the Okinawa Marine newspaper, and he's like, calls me up and he said, "Anders, come down to Camp Courtney." I go to Camp Courtney and he says, "Hey, listen, you're going to be the current operations chief for 3rd Marine Division now." I was like, what the hell is that? But somebody else went up to J-Dub. I came down to Camp Courtney. I sit down at this time. I'm still a staff sergeant. I'm 11 years in the service. And I sit down next to my OIC, who's a lieutenant colonel, who's been in the Marine Corps for 24 years. And I'm like, I say, like, what am I going to do here? Like, what am I going to advise you on? And he's like, "Look, staff sergeant, I just need you to do what you're told." I said, "Check, I can do that." And as I sat there trying to figure out my place in this new world, and keep in mind, now I'm holding a master sergeant's billet. So I'm 2 levels above, my current pay grade again. And it was at that level where it's like operational, but bleeding into like strategic, so like looking at the strategic deployment plans for not just Marines, but Navy vessels, aircraft, like what is the capabilities of all these different entities. And we're also dealing with all the humanitarian events that are happening inside PACOM. So hurricane in the Philippines, earthquake in Nepal, like all those things, we're providing resources. And I was responsible for making sure that those resources got to where they were supposed to be. The point to what I am saying is it was the first time I got to see the big blue arrow. And from an operational point of view, I absolutely fell in love with being able to move the big blue arrow from an operational standpoint. during those humanitarian events, I was sitting next to members of USAID, Department of State, a number of other different three-letter agencies that deal with foreign assistance. And I got to see some of their playbooks. And I was like, oh, damn, that looks just like what we do in the Marine Corps. What exactly do you do? And they're like, well, I'm the emergency management, whatever. And that triggered me to go like, okay, emergency management is a civilian thing. I can go and do that. I did that. I got my bachelor's degree in emergency management. I got my master's degree in emergency management. Fast forward a few years, as I'm doing my thesis for my master's program, my professor at the time was like, hey, have you ever heard of this thing called business continuity? And I was like, no. Did I pass my thesis? I thought it was like his soft way of like telling me that I wasn't, whatever. So he said, no, your thesis is good, but I think you should look into business continuity. So I did that. I found out that there's really only two agencies that can credential you in business continuity in the United States. So I got one of certified business continuity professional certification, and I just started networking. I'll pause there and see if there's anything that you want to dive into.
There's a lot to unpack there. Look, we're only 10 minutes into the show and you already dropped like tons of wisdom. First off, I think this first 10 minutes should be shared with people who are new to the military. So if someone's listening and they know someone who's currently in, like, send them this show because it sounds like you always had the attitude of just give me more. Like,
yes,
it was like looking for opportunities. The fact that you were paying attention to people who were officers, the books they were carrying, you were not necessarily satisfied with just being another grunt, right? Like a lot of guys, they get in and they're just kind of like, I mean, this is my experience. I think we had some things in common here. It's like I found myself in positions beyond where my experience, right? And it was like, wow, you're now in charge of this whole thing as an E5. And I'm like, like everyone who's normally in charge of this is like E6 or E7, and so it's like, yeah, so you were always looking for something better, going up another level, and you had the insight to be paying attention to what might cross over as a civilian. And then the last thing I think really stands out is that you were engaged in a university program where the professor, it sounds like you were in communication with a professor who was like, you were in a relationship with this person where they knew you well enough to go, hey, you should check this out. And so big picture is you were actively engaged along the whole way. Like that sounds like it's like built into who you are. And if someone's listening, you're like, wow, I really didn't do that, or I have not been doing that. That's also like, all skills are learnable, right? So that's kind of, a lot of times people think, well, that's just how he is, but how you are being is also a learned behavior. And so it doesn't mean it's always easy to do that, but even if you're already out of the military, I think there's a lot of insights to this. Like if you're going to school, interact with the professors, see if they have suggestions on what you could be doing.
Yeah, no, Mike, listen, I tell anybody who's providing instruction to me, I tell them two things. Hey, look, I'm going to be the best student you've ever had because I'm going to turn in all my homework on time. I'm also going to be the worst student you've ever had because I'm going to ask a lot of stupid questions because I'm really going to engage because you're the expert providing me the instruction. I want every ounce you got to give. I want to know what this is. What would this theory or what would this be? What would it look like for a government entity? What would it look like for a private entity? What would it look like at the lower level of governments, the senior level of governments, etc.? I want everything that you have knowledge wise, so that I can add. I am a sponge. I just absorb information and I try to figure out how can I apply this to where I currently am, and more importantly, where I want to be in the future.
This is what I call humility. And humility is knowing that you don't know, or at least acting like you don't know. And one thing that occurred to me a while back was you can either choose humility or you will be humbled. And I
Yes.
think that most people are humbled because they didn't choose humility. And I love the like, I'm going to ask a lot of stupid questions and be the first one to raise their hand and be that guy. And I think a lot of times people are afraid to be that person because they don't want to look stupid. But if you get into the habit of doing that, then you end up appearing to be the smartest person in the room. And you end
Yeah.
up becoming that because you're asking so many questions. So I know a lot of like I was saying right before we got um on this podcast, what I do is I subscribe to the veterans thread on Reddit, and the amount I do it to keep a beat on what's happening for the average veteran, and the amount of guys that get out and go, wow, I got out. And it's funny, you were in infantry. And so a lot of people associate that with how could I apply being an infantryman to the civilian world? That just doesn't make sense, like that there would be a position. And so I really like that even if you're already out and you're going, man, there's just nothing out here for me. What you're saying right now is exactly what these men and women need to be hearing.
If I can add to that really quickly, everything we do in the infantry, we have the main effort, which is essentially the individuals who are supposed to be the ones to do the actions on the objective to kick the door down or to engage the enemy on the objective, right? But you also have supporting effort number 1 and supporting effort number 2, which are two separate units that are supporting you as the main effort to accomplish your goal. And so everything I do in life, I look at like, what is the objective? What is my main effort? And then what are two things that can enable me or support me in accomplishing that objective? And if that fails, then maybe supporting effort number 1 and supporting effort 2, they might have to become the main effort. If my primary direction fails, then I have to take an alternate approach or a path to get to the end state, to the objective. That's okay. But the relationship between those three entities, the biggest thing is conditions set. So are the conditions set for me to do this next action? And then when they are set, how fast can I transition? So either I'm in a defensive position and I'm providing fire for a maneuvering entity. All right, so the entity is where they're supposed to be. Now I have to transition to a different position. How fast can I get there to start doing my next job or my next task? So I always call it, I always do this with my kids. Okay, like you're done. So like transition, go to the next thing until they accomplish whatever they're supposed to do. But condition set and like focusing on like when I achieve this, what's next? Because I never want to lose momentum in anything I'm doing personally or professionally.
Oh, I love that. Can you give an example of how that works in the civilian world and
I absolutely
professionally?
can. It's applying
Yes.
for jobs because I believe in accuracy by volume. Shout out to my machine gun brothers out there.
Yes.
Yeah. So when I apply for jobs, like for example, right, my initial plan coming out of the Marine Corps was I'm just going to do another 20 years in the federal government and retire twice before I'm the age of 60 years old. And during my last 2 years, I was at Wounded Warrior Battalion, and I was supporting a lot of service members in their transition and setting them up with their resources. And I realized very quickly that government work is not what I wanted to do. However, it was one of the things that because you go to the job fairs and it's like every 3-letter agency wants you in Sheriff's County and all this other stuff. And so my main effort at the time was Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, to go do emergency management for them. And then I was looking at project management. We'll call that supporting effort number 1. And then business continuity, this thing I'm just learning about, we'll call that supporting effort number 2. And so I focused on FEMA. I focused on emergency management, and I applied. I had some interviews. I got some job offers, but I'm sorry, I'm not working in Oakland for $80,000 a year. It's just not going to happen. Not with the
No.
family of 4. So, okay, so that's not, so conditions set. Conditions, I now have target feedback, so to speak. I know this is not the objective for me, and I'm going to shift to project management. Again, salaries are low. There's a lot of opportunities out there, but there's not a whole lot of room to grow, in my opinion. So then I focused on business continuity. It's got the appropriate salary. I can work in all 50 states. I can go global. I was like, okay, so now that becomes my main effort, and I focused on it. And that could be like a violation of those terms, right? Of how I'm using those terms. But in Gayle Anders' mind, that's how it made sense to me. This is my primary principal direction of attack. And as soon as it's no longer sustainable, then I'm going to shift directions or change courses. I suck at gambling, but I'm pretty good at life, at taking risk in life in regards to, because at any time, the consequences are not just on me, they're on my wife, they're on my kids, they're on our house. Like there's severe consequences for failure, which is why I'm so focused on not failing.
Yeah, it doesn't sound that risky to me. You're just so calculated. You're using a lot of that's the tools you picked up in the military, and you were able to see how that works somewhere else. I think that's a lot of people have a hard time doing that, where they go, well, this is how it worked there. I don't know how that works over here. What do you attribute that ability to go? It sounded like you started doing this while you were in the military. You started analyzing what's going on in the civilian world and touching the civilian world a bit. Because I think a lot of times guys and gals get out and they haven't, I was this way. I didn't think anything about the civilian world until like my day out. And I think that was probably why it took me an extra little bit to find my own stride.
How do I say this? I feel like I realized that I had culminated in my Marine Corps career around the 11 to 12 year mark. Like I was just not going to do much more or be able to see much more because the war is winding down, Afghanistan's going on, but they're allocating units to different, like they want to focus on amphibious operations. The commandant, I forget who it was at the time, was shifting direction. And I said, okay, so we're going to go back to like sailing around the seas and engaging with all these different countries, whatever. But I realized that this is not for life for me, right? Because it was just rinse, recycle, repeat. You come home from deployment, you lose all your manpower, you get new manpower, you get new mission, and you're training, which I loved. Keep in mind, like I loved it, but I also realized that I cannot do this for like the entirety of my life, right? I love the Australian Defense Force because when we did some training with the Australians, like there was a 55-year-old Lance Corporal, and I was like, dude, I want to be you. But in America, like they would have kicked me out after 4 years if I was still a Lance Corporal. I would have absolutely just done it. They just keep giving me like, some pay raises to match inflation, and I'll be your 55-year-old Lance Corporal. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that I realized that this is not for the rest of my life. So I started being curious, like what else can I do out there? And yes, I would go to career fairs. Like I have 3 years left on contract, but one of my Lance Corporals is going to a career fair because he's getting out. Say, hey man, I'll drive you. I'll take you. Because I'm curious, like what are they offering to people at these? And it was all Riverside Sheriff's Office, Los Angeles, Orange County Sheriff's Office. It was all law enforcement. And it's like, dude, man, I got to have something better than this. I applied to the FBI. I went through their initial screening with the FBI, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching this video, and dude, I went back like 20 years to being like a recruit or not even a poolee, right, in the recruiter's office watching the video. And I was like, yeah, no, I don't want to be a boot again. I've already done this once. So yeah. It was just like, just go out there and just experience new things. Like go to a job fair, like see what the offer is. A lot of my Marines, when they would get out and I'd sit down and, give them their out brief, like, because if I, so anytime I got a Marine, I'd sit them down, I'd counsel them like, hey, here's my expectations. But as they make the decision to leave, I'd sit down with them and say, hey, what are your goals? And dude, I'm telling you right now, like I had everything from, I want to be a professional video gamer. I'm going to go back and work on my dad's farm. I'm going to get my pilot's license and fly for United. And like when people would like give me their ideas, I'm like, no, man, I ain't got the time to be a pilot. Like I don't have the savings to just go to school and like go through all this and like whatever. But I'd be curious enough to learn more about what they were doing. Law enforcement, that was another thing I thought about or considered. And when I sat down with the police agencies and I would sit there and talk to them about, hey, look, I see that base salary is like $70,000 a year, but why do you all brag about making $120,000 a year? And he's like, that's overtime. Like if you volunteer for special events and you work, and I'm like, whoa. So I'm going to leave the Marine Corps And I don't have a personal life in the Corps because like, hey, 3 o'clock, Lance Corporal Banat's got a DUI. I'm driving out there to go get him out of jail, or
Uh-huh.
somebody's doing something stupid on the weekend. Like I lost my weekend because I'm the leader, right? But I was like, I'm not gonna go from like working 120-hour weeks to working 120-hour weeks. Like it's just not like, no, I do what I do because I'm a Marine and those are the expectations of me, but I don't want to go do long, like mad respect for what they do. Every day they are on the front lines. Mad shout out to those dudes, but yeah, I'm not going to kill myself for another 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I went and looked at of all organizations, I looked at Capitol Police.
Okay. Yeah.
Like my two things when I got out, I was like, all right, I wanted to do like Secret Service, but like you had to go like because I was enlisted, it was like go through the Capitol Police route, and then it was either that or take a Blackwater contract to Kuwait.
Yeah.
And I was just coming off a deployment. I'm like, I'm not gonna just get home after 6 months and then do another 6 months. And yeah, thankfully I didn't do either one of those. The idea of living in DC was just that was kind of like it's like gonna go live in this really expensive place and just be a cop out there just does not sound like a good time. Not gonna go do another deployment. I'll just go to school and figure that out. It is interesting that the options that are out there usually are contracting or law enforcement.
Well, I feel like
Those are
that's what's
those are
presented to
comfortable.
us.
Those are also
Yeah. Well,
comfortable moves to make.
yeah, I feel like they're playing on to our comfort zone, right? And I'm
Mhm.
the very much the individual that I'm like, no, I what we're doing in the military, like all the planning, like forget that. I think it's MCDP 5TAC 1. It's the Marine Corps planning process. You read that whole book cover to cover, and every institution, every corporation, every company has a similar planning process. They just don't call it a course of action wargaming or course of action decision matrix. It's called something different. But what I would do is when I'd find people that I could build a relationship with, sit down with them and like, hey, explain this to me. Like, here's how I'm going to explain it to you. What does that sound like in your world? So that would
Yeah.
help me translate it for the next
Nice.
conversation I would have with a complete stranger.
Nice. So you take what you did and see and talk to people in the civilian world to see if they could translate that for you.
Yeah. And listen, man, like out of 1,000 conversations, I maybe had 30 or 40 meaningful conversations. And out of those, maybe 10 or 15 turned into meaningful relationships that I still maintain to this day. So, to my point about applying for jobs, accuracy by volume, I approach the same thing when it comes to networking. Um, because the great thing is like there's so many veterans out here that are crushing it. They're doing so much better than I am. They're at the executive level for whatever corporation or institution they represent. So I started there. I start with the leaders. I start with people who are already doing the things that I think I want to do, and try to get some feedback and some context on how they got to where they got to.
Yeah, I did some research last I think it was last August, September, and I was wanting to do some fundraising for a veteran nonprofit that I'm involved with, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go look at the numbers and see if veterans like I was gonna like do a presentation where I was gonna say, veterans don't make as much money as the civilians, their counterparts, and I was gonna make that as part of like this is why you should donate to this program. And I came to find out as I was doing the research that veterans tend to make more money
Yes.
than the civilian counterparts. Now it's a bell curve because there's also more veterans that are homeless. But if we look at the absolute average, you as a veteran, we have some advantages. And the other thing, I've been an entrepreneur for over 16 years now, and people go, "Oh, you've never worked in corporate," and I go, "I worked in the epitome of corporate. I was in the military. I was in the Navy. Like
Yeah.
I was as corporate as it gets. Like there's
I I absolutely hate when a recruiter or anybody says to anybody, you don't have corporate experience, because you will never find another individual with more stakeholder engagement experience. Is really what you mean when you say corporate experience. Like, do you know how to do with external teams? Do you know how to do cross-functional collaboration? Do you know how to present to senior leaders of a department or an organization to get you to present them with information to make informed decisions. Just exactly what we're doing in the military. Only guess what? When I tell somebody, when I tell an executive, hey, this is my recommendation to you, it's 99% of the time has nothing to do with life or death. Whereas in the military, everything we advise the commander on is absolutely treated to life or death. Hey, sir, when we hit the beach, we should go left or we should go right, whatever the context is. That those decisions result in, like, if it's a bad decision, people will die. In corporate America, that's not the case. So when people say you don't have corporate experience, I'm like, no, I have something better than corporate experience. I know how to like inform people to make decisions because Lord help you if you're the one who provided that recommendation and you lost half your platoon, you know?
Yeah, you're translating that, and you're positioning yourself right in you're we're always selling ourselves all the time. Anyone who's like, oh, I'm not in sales, like, no, you are definitely in sales. Like, if you're making money in any way, you're selling ideas, you're selling yourself, you're positioning yourself. So it sounds like you positioned yourself as somebody who has, look, I have better than corporate experience. I'm going to come in, I'm going to dominate this. And they go, oh, didn't think about that before. Because I think that for people who never served in the military, they don't know that you've got better than corporate experience.
Yeah. A lot of them think we're just rank and file. We're trigger pullers. We just do what we're told or whatever the case is, not understanding that, at 19 years old, I was given 3 other lives to be responsible for as a fire team leader, right? Like, that's huge. Like, hey, where are my 3 Marines at? Where are their FVGs? Where are their batteries? Where's the water? Like, when's the last time you hydrated? Did you take your medication today? It's heavy on the engagement for a number of different reasons because, you're at the lowest level, but the consequences of not doing those pre-combat checks or pre-combat inspections will result in the loss of life for other team members, right? So we take everything very seriously. But I think what kind of scares people in corporate America is they think we're going to come in there and we're going to be like this abrasive, unaccepting individual. And I'm like, no, man, listen, the military is a social experiment for American society. We have transgender individuals within the military. We have homosexuals. We have every orientation in the military. Race is not an issue. Economic status is not an issue. You're dealing with such a diverse group of demographics. I have never seen a better representation of diversity, equity, and inclusion than I have seen in the Marine Corps, in the military at large. We got people from Kansas, we got people from Africa, working on their citizenship, people from South America working on their citizenship to be U.S. citizens and serving their time in the military. So when you actually sit down with a recruiter and explain that to them, they're like, oh shit, like, you are way, way ahead of but it's about how you deliver that message, right, Mike? If you come in like you're coming off the third rope in a WWE wrestling match, then yeah, the message is not going to be well received. So you really need to gauge your audience. Like, I appreciate the softer approach. Like, hey, listen, I understand that that's your opinion, and I understand you've made a decision to choose a better applicant. But before you do, can I just provide some feedback on the corporate experience comment you just made, so you can have a better engagement with your next applicant? That kind of shit. Get the call back.
Yeah. Yeah. The inclusion piece is huge. I think, sometimes we can get out of the military and come across as like, we're a certain way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Me being a white guy, I've had this experience with people like, like, you're a certain way. Like, are you like really inclusive? And da, da, da. I'm like, dude, there was no space for, if anyone who served in the military, all that shit, if you had an issue with race or you had an issue with sexuality, you had an issue or whatever, that goes out the window in weeks. Within the first few weeks, it goes out the window because it is it's a meritocracy. Like, can you perform? It doesn't, and you end up respecting everybody, no matter what's going on or where they came from or how much melanin they have in their skin. It just doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. So like all of those experiences make us the best teammates and make us the best leaders. maybe not the best leaders, but it absolutely is a force multiplier in the capabilities that we can provide to any company in a leadership position, whether it be manager, director, VP, whatever the context may be. What where the gap is the business acumen, right? Like, do you really understand payroll? Do you understand conflict resolution within the confines of human resources? Yeah, you can't. Hey, hey, I didn't like you way you talked to Sarah during the meeting, so we're gonna go run 3 miles. Like you can't do that outside the meeting. It's like you can't do that. So understanding that that's you have to have the experience, but you also have to have the emotional intelligence to be like, hey, check it out. So what you did was a little bit unprofessional, and you're gonna go see HR to because that's whatever process you have within your company or your business. Yeah,
Yeah,
just yeah. You got to
that's one of the
have.
big challenges. That's one of the big challenges I find with veterans is the communication. I had this, and I see a lot of other people have this. They get out, and it feels like everyone's an idiot. It doesn't sound like you had this. Like it sounds like you came out with a lot of respect for everybody. But I know that that's not always the case, and it comes down to uh, well, respect other people, but the communication can be abrasive sometimes. Like you get out and you're like, just do what I tell you to do, because if you don't, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't quite carry over. But I mean, I guess you're describing how it does carry over into the civilian world, where like you can't have them go run 3 miles, but you
Yeah. No.
can tell them, you're going to go talk to HR now, which is probably just as terrifying for the
If
average
it was an
person.
egregious violation, right? So like there is like a small buffer area, if you will, like, oh, I misspoke or I should not have said that. Like there is a slap on the wrist type of thing, right? But then further offenses, obviously it escalates and escalates. So I kind of just went straight to like the end zone there with that whole example. But the point is, it's like you have to understand that there are certain things that are acceptable within the military that are not going to be acceptable outside of the military. And you need to understand the culture of the organization that you're joining, so you can leverage the appropriate approach for depending on what that context may be.
Did you make any mistakes in that, or what was that learning curve like?
I want to say for me, the learning curve was just like I had a huge technology gap. Like I didn't like. What do you mean the cloud's not in the cloud? It's like these big warehouses on Earth. Like what do you mean? Like understanding like, oh, this is an object storage system, or this is a database, and this is like, and I'm whoa. So yeah, it was me and YouTube with a bunch of random, people on YouTube trying to understand like, hey, what is cloud tech? What is an elastic cloud computing instance? What is a relational database? And just trying to like, for me, that was the hardest part because I didn't have anything in the military that I could like, oh, that's what this means, and I can point to that. When it comes to planning, yeah, absolutely, but when I'm trying to understand the business and how we deliver our product to the customers and how I can advise leaders on, hey, the appropriate continuity and resilience things to have in place, that's where the challenge was for me. That's where the knowledge gap.
This reminds me of learning a new language.
100%,
Yeah,
100%.
because you have the structure. It's like the structure of language.
Yeah,
Like, oh, okay, I see the structure of English, and then I'm looking at Spanish, and like the structure is a little different, but there might be like 15 new rules I need to learn, and that's
yeah,
really easy. But then the rest is vocabulary. It's like the
yes,
cloud. Like, what the hell does the cloud even mean? Like, okay,
yeah.
there's servers somewhere underground. So the cloud's underground.
No, and to add to that, right? In business continuity, I support the entirety of the business. So one day I'm working with marketing, one day I'm working with legal, one day I'm working with engineers, and I'm context shifting, sometimes multiple times through the day. And how I talk to engineers, I cannot talk to marketing. They don't use the same terms, the same things don't have effect. You asked me like, hey, what was that like? Have I failed? Dude, absolutely. I've had people get up and walk out of meetings on me because I misjudged my approach, or I didn't do my due diligence to understand like the risk tolerance for the specific team or whatever the context may be. And in each one of those things, it was like, being in corporate America, like there is no, I still don't understand like at what point is it unacceptable to fail. I think it really comes down to like maliciousness, right? To be honest with you, but because nobody gives you written counseling and says like, hey, here's what you need to do better next time. You have to go through like a self-analysis and be like, where did I go wrong? More importantly, how do I follow up with an individual who just walked out on my presentation? Because I've got to fix this relationship, but I can't be too aggressive. I can't just go like, hey, Mike, what did I do wrong? What's your problem? You don't like my slideshow? You don't like my gifts? Or whatever the case is. Like, and sometimes, dude, tactical patience. Like, don't rush to, like, sometimes you got to rush to failure, but more like when it comes to like people, do not rush to failure. Give them space, let them figure out whatever they have going on. And then a couple of weeks, hey, listen, I'm just looking for some feedback. I obviously failed in my delivery to you and your team, and I'd like to better understand why. And so when I do fail, I always try to give that individual an opportunity to provide me some feedback so that I don't fail again, because I'm going to be working with other people in that individual's org. And I don't like, so maybe it's a culture thing that I misunderstood. I don't know. But so did I fail? Absolutely. You're looking at 41 years of failure. I fail all the time, but I try not to do the same failure twice.
It sounds like one of the differences between the military and the civilian world is in the military, you're likely not going to get fired and replaced. Like you're kind of stuck with who you got,
Yeah.
Like it's not like, oh, we can just replace you tomorrow. There's a bunch of applicants waiting to get this job.
Yeah.
So it requires more. So in the military, there's this constant feedback happening. Like, oh, you screwed up, and this is exactly how you screwed up, and now this is how you do it better. In the civilian world, it's like they're not stuck with you. So it requires that self-reflection. Like you have to give to yourself what the military was giving you previously.
Yeah, absolutely. In the military, pain retains. If I make a bad decision, either I burnt more calories or we went through my water faster, or one of my Marines was a heat case because we were exposed to the elements a little bit too longer than we should have been, because whatever the case is. But you learn very quickly when you make a bad decision, and it's usually some type of either a physical thing that you feel more pain because of whatever, or you just lost 8 hours of your workday because you didn't submit the appropriate request and the 7 tons didn't show up, and now you're a day late. In the civilian world, it's not like that, right? So you've got to go out there and find a way to get that feedback so that you understand, like, okay, where am I falling short? But you got to do it early enough before you actually get the boot, because they don't need you, right? There's 1,000 people behind me that are trying to hold the seat that I'm in right now. So but here's the deal, Mike, for me, and what people have to understand is like, what do you want to do when you get out? Do you want to be an individual contributor, which is what they call it out here, where you are just managing a program? Or do you want to be a leader? Do you want to be an executive? Each thing that you do that requires more scope, more accountability, more responsibility is more stress, more engagement, more time away from the family. I don't care how senior you are. Now you're responsible for other human lives again. So you have to make that decision. I love the excitement of knowing that I may not be here tomorrow. And maybe that's a sick twist on my PTSD or some other thing that someone diagnosed me with. But I love the fact that every day I'm earning my place. I like to believe that I've earned my place here.
Well, I think that's just being in touch with reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, true. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I've been an entrepreneur for 16 years, dude. I'm, what I like to tell people when they get into entrepreneurship, because I've consulted a lot of people leaving corporate and stepping into their own game, is, the corporate. So like the military really shields you from reality. Like in some ways you're in greater touch. So the ways that you're in greater touch is when you go out on a deployment, you realize that there really aren't any rules. like man, people be misbehaving, right? Like it's like, oh wow, and then you come back to America and like, oh, everyone follows the rules here way more than these other places. Like we're in more touch with reality because of that. But then but then all your food's provided for, shelter provided for, you got an ache, just go to medical. will handle everything for you. Like, you don't have to worry about health insurance. You have to worry about any of these things. Like everything that's not your specialty is somebody else's responsibility. And then you get
Right.
out and you get exposed to the reality of, oh, I just took on way more responsibility when I got out. It's a broader responsibility, right? Like
Yeah.
it
No.
may not be life and death all the time, but it's a broader responsibility. And when you're in a corporate environment, you're shielded from there's like a buffer between what's happening out there and you inside the company. And then when you get into entrepreneurship, like you're on the front lines of
Yeah.
you feel everything. Oh, there's a little blip in the market, you're gonna feel it. Whereas if you're in corporate and you got a salary, there's a blip in the market, you may not feel it. But the two things that are real is your job is always at risk, right?
Yes.
Whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're in corporate, like you said, there's 1,000 people in line waiting to take your position. In business, there's 1,000 other businesses that would be love to have my clients. And they're someone's one click away from going to somebody else. And so there's just something that I think is good for people to be aware of like, it's not cushy. It's not a
No. It's a hustle, man.
life doesn't get cushy just because you got out of the military.
Yeah. Listen, I'm gonna tell you right now. I used to tell my wife, "Don't worry, baby. I know I'm just a sergeant, but when I pick up staff sergeant, don't worry about it because I'd always work for scumbag staff sergeants." And we're like, they'd show up at like 9 o'clock in the morning. And say, "Dude, we done PT, clean guns, and like what are we doing? Call for fire missions." So, just and the dude would just show up. So I looked at that and be like, "Okay, so I guess staff sergeants don't show up till like 9 o'clock in the morning. Cool." So I'd come home and tell my wife, I'm like, "Don't worry, baby. I'm in zone. I'm getting selected. Like when I pick up staff sergeant, it's gonna be so much better." Absolutely not. It was worse. It was more, right? Because instead of 12, now I'm dealing with 40 people and yada. And so, hey, don't worry, baby. When I pick up Gunny, like Gunny doesn't show up until like lunchtime. As soon as I pick up Gunny, like life's gonna be so much easier. Like I pick up Gunny, and it's like, no, I'm at work earlier. I'm at work longer. A lot of that had to do with me as a human because I refuse to fail, and not even me. I refuse to let others down. And so I was always ahead of everything, right? So I'm doing roll call at 05:30 to make sure that I got everybody. So if I'm missing somebody, I got time to fix it before I got to submit the morning report at 7:30. Like that kind of like just leaning into it because I know I got some shenanigans going on with my dudes.
For sure.
Like, dude, I'm telling you right now, man, like being stationed in Hawaii, like you just don't know who's going to show up to formation. There's just so much temptation out there, right? So it's just like, yeah, well, they're not doing bad things. They're just, they're with their girlfriends or whatever they're doing, and
Just having a good time.
Yeah, just have
Lose
young
track of
dudes
time,
having a good
man.
time, right? So you go through all of that, and you realize that I'm not going to let the others down. So you translate that into civilian world, and guess what? I don't own anybody, right? So like finance has their own processes and workflows in place. So when I have a pay issue with one of my subordinates or one of my team members now, I can't just like barge in the door to finance and be like, "Hey, why is this individual's pay jacked up?" No, there's a request, there's a submission. Now, I will say that in corporate America, there's usually a time sensitivity thing with this. So like you're not just gonna be like, "Oh, it's been 30 days, my pay's still jacked up." No, your pay's been fixed in 2 hours because you're dealing with like you're dealing with some other compliance and regulatory things with employee health and workforce, etc. So the response is a lot better, but yeah, you have to account for all those variables.
Yeah. I'm loving this conversation. It's so cool. So what can you walk me through getting out of the Marine Corps and engaging with, did you engage with companies before you got out? What was that like? What was that process of going, all right, I'm going to leave. I'm unsure exactly how this is going to work. And then I end up at Netflix at what sounds like the ideal job for you. Sounds like a dream job.
Dude, it's beautiful. It's decentralized. There's not a whole lot of gateways. I don't have to like ask permission to go talk to somebody. I just go talk to them. And if they're not interested, I stop talking and I go find somebody else to talk to. So like whatever the case is. But when I made it so I'll explain why I got out. Okay. 18 years in infantry. I basically promoted myself out of the fun. Went to Wounded Warrior Battalion. I was doing that thing as the company first sergeant. It was the first time. It's probably during that was 2 years that I gained the most emotional intelligence because I got 200 Marines on the roster, but I only got 100 in formation because I got this person in Maine receiving cancer treatment. I got one person in South Dakota who's a paraplegic. I got one person. So I got Marines all over the world for a number of different things because that's where their care is, right? So I had to gain a little bit of emotional intelligence because I could not be the barbarian that I had been for 18 years. When I got to I think it was 14 or 16 months on station, I called my monitor and I said, hey, look, man, like I'm sitting here advising like some pretty senior commanders and sergeants majors. I got my reps in as a first sergeant. Can I please go back to the infantry? The guy was like, no, I'm sending you to another non-infantry unit. And I said, is that your final decision? He's like, who the hell do you think you're talking to, first sergeant? I said, no, Sergeant, with all due respect, I'm just asking, like, is there anything I can do? Can I call a friend of a friend to maybe convince you, like, or, whatever? Because I see plenty of vacancies. And, I said, I'll go to 29 Palms. I don't care. I just want to I want to go back to the infantry. They said no. So I knew my dream was over as far as being an infantry Marine. That being said, very next day I dropped my retirement papers. He calls me and he's like, hey, what's it going to take for you to pull your papers? I said, look, Sergeant Major, I'm not playing this game with you. Now, the reason why I held my ground is because I know a previous Sergeant Major that I was very, very close with. He re-enlisted because he was over 20 years. He had re-enlisted because he was told he was going to go to a specific duty station that was going to propel his career as far as like the number of stars of the general that he was going to be serving with. As soon as his re-enlistment went through, he got orders to a different unit.
Oh my
and they
gosh.
screwed him. They screwed him. And I was like, and so when he called me and says, how can we make this right? I knew that regardless of whatever he said, the potential for me getting screwed over was significant. So I just held my ground. Nope, I'm not receding. I'm not pulling back my papers. My decision is my decision. I want to retire in the next 12 months. So that's what happened with that piece. I doubled down on my master's degree. I was double coursing, trying to get all these things done. And at this time, please understand, like, I was a horrible husband. I was an even worse father. Okay. And I know worse is not a right word, but that's the only way I can communicate about my actions as a husband and as a father. Why? Because I had to commit so much time in the Marine Corps, so much time to my master's program. And by the way, now I'm trying to learn this world of business continuity. As I'm going through this process over 12 months, I'm also trying to reach out to people on LinkedIn to build my network and get an understanding of what this is. And I wasn't getting very much feedback or interaction with my outreach. So I go through the course, certification course for business continuity. I get my certs. I put the 4 little letters behind my name. And all of a sudden, people start accepting my friend invites on LinkedIn and having 30-minute conversations with me. And, I'm in uniform. Like during the workday at lunch, I would spend my lunch. I'd have 4 meetings teed up, 30, 30, 30, 30. And then that's my 2-hour break, right? Or, whatever the case, depending on time zones. I was trying to figure out what industry I wanted to be in. Because business continuity is across all businesses. You look at the Fortune 500 list, there's a business continuity, a resilience team, a risk team, and every single one of those, it's on the 10Ks that are provided to publicly traded companies. What I found out very quickly is I did not want to be in a regulated environment. Now, this might be a over-exaggeration, but essentially, I'm not the checklist dude. I'm not going to show up to you and say, hey, Bob, if you don't do this, we're going to go to jail. The company's going to get fined. We're going to get cease and desist by whatever entity. It's just not who Gayle Anders is. So the entertainment industry is what cued me because we don't have to be here, right? They have other ways of accomplishing these things for the things that they have to do, i.e. consultants. So my value is demonstrated on a daily basis. So I met with people from Sony, Warner Brothers, Discovery, National Geographic. I was talking to all these individuals trying to get an understanding. Some of them turned into meaningful relationships that still mentor me today. One of them was currently working for Netflix, which we built a relationship over about 8 months. And then I was eligible for the SkillBridge program, which is essentially a corporate fellowship program where during your last 3 to 6 months of active service, you can go and work on site with the company of your choosing and basically figure out if that's really what you want to do the rest of your life. So I doubled down on business continuity. I approached the dude at Netflix and I said, hey, do you need free labor for 12 weeks? That's exactly how I presented it to him. He goes, what? I said, look, so this is the internship because in corporate America, internships cost companies money. They have to provide you pay. They have to provide you benefits. Like there is no, I don't know. I've never seen an unpaid internship in any of the Fortune 100 companies. So it is a significant investment from the company when they bring on an intern. So when I told him about SkillBridge, I said, look, man, it's free labor. You don't have to pay me anything. That I'm still getting active duty pay. I get all my benefits. I just need some exposure and some experience. And so he said yes. I teed up everything and we were mentoring. He's teaching me. I basically hit the ground running for my internship and he had zero expectations for me. But then when I showed him how fast I was able to grasp, one of my coworkers, like we would spend 2 hours every single Wednesday and we would talk about cloud computing. We would talk about the cloud environment. What does the ecosystem look like in the cloud? How is it architect? Some things you need to consider, et cetera. So we would spend that, and that really helped me like get the understanding because that was like my safe space to ask the stupidest questions. And so I still work with him. His name's TJ. We still laugh about the things I asked him because I was like, dude, that was a really stupid question. Thank you so much for your patience. Like what happens if the internet goes out? Well, we just don't have the cloud anymore. I was just like, oh, okay. So anyways, I go through the 12 weeks and my boss at the time was very direct with me. He goes, Gayle, do not ask for a job. I said, I'm not asking for a job. Maybe a letter of reference, if that's even a thing out here in corporate America. I don't know if that's a thing. So anyways, I go through that and every week I'm applying. He's helping me prepare for interviews, helping me do diligence on the companies I'm applying to. I'm getting job offers. I'm turning job offers down because I knew that I made the decision to live in Los Angeles. Why? Because I want to make money. So zip codes matter in corporate America. So I chose to live in Los Angeles. I'm targeting those companies in the area. And where he prepared me for interviews. He'd help me with salary negotiations, like everything you're supposed to be doing as a SkillBridge intern. And then I got let go at the end of my 12 weeks. But I had a job offer with a bank. And I was very happy with the salary that they offered me. I was in Pasadena. But I was not happy because I didn't want to be in a regulated space because, to my point, there's high turnover out here in corporate America. And when I got to the bank, like my boss was like, hey, I've been here for 16 years. And I was like, there's something weird about the way that he said it. And I was like, wait, you've been in Pasadena for 16 years? You've been with the business for 16 years? He goes, no, both. But this has also been my desk for 16 years. And I knew straight away I was going to have, dude, I haven't had a boss for more than 18 months for 20 years of my life. Every 18 months, like the commander, the senior, or the officers are always rotating for more experience, more as they progress in their careers. So I knew I was going to have issues. This dude was not going to be receptive to any good ideas. And I'm full of good ideas.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. He's like, why would we do it any different? It's working, right?
Yeah. The regulation says this. We did that. We met that standard. We met that requirement, and don't ask for more. Okay, cool, whatever. So that being said, on day 3 of orientation, my boss calls me back, and he's like, "Hey, what's it going to take for you to come back to Netflix?" And I said, "Dude, I need a job offer. I need an offer letter. I need to sign. I need something. I can't do this on goodwills and intentions anymore." And so I was also in a dilemma now. Right? Because as much as I did not want to be where I was, that loyalty thing was so strong in me, right? Netflix made it very clear there was no job opportunity at the end of my internship. And I had accepted that and I started accounting for that and planning for that. But I had accepted a job offer. I was in person. I'd met my boss. I had signed non-disclosure agreements and yada, yada, yada. And now I'm like, I go home and I'm like torn because I was like, I basically just swore allegiance to this bank. As a continuity professional. And my wife was like, are you stupid? Like, what do you mean you're having doubts about like accepting the offer? And I was like, nah, babe, I'm kind of torn inside because whatever. So I got over there very quickly. I signed the papers. I sent it in. And then I had to basically go through the, hey, I quit thing. So I showed up at 7:30 on Friday. I turned in my laptop and my badge, told my boss that I was no longer interested in this opportunity. It wasn't the right fit, whatever. I forget what exactly I said, but I do remember He says, "Hey, Gayle, it's 7:30 in the morning. HR's not here yet. Can you go wait in the cafeteria until they show up, and then we'll figure out what we do for offboarding, because I've never really had to offboard anybody." And I'm like, "Sure, I'll go wait." So like, I'm Mike. This is the deal, brother. I felt like like a bad Lance Corporal sitting on first sergeant's bench outside his office. You
Uh-huh.
know what I'm saying? So I'm sitting
Uh-huh.
in the cafeteria, dude. I'm like, bro, what am I doing? I'm such an asshole right now. Like, why am I? This dude has no authority over me. Why am I listening to him? I just quit my job and I'm still taking orders from this individual. I got up and I left. 4 hours later, he calls me and says, "Hey, we're in a cafeteria looking for you. I figured out what you need to do now." I said, "Dude, no, I'm gone. I'm out. Like, I quit. I'm not going to wait there like a good Boy Scout." All I had to do was send an email to HR saying that I resignated, or I forget the word that they wanted me to put in there, but I resigned from the position. But it was just that moment too. I was just like, I really got to break the habit of just doing what I'm told for the sake of doing what I'm told. And that was very, very hard for me as a Marine.
There's a lot of awareness there.
Yeah.
A lot of people they're not even aware that they're just, oh, I'm following orders
Right.
that I don't actually have to follow. I'm sure you've heard this language before. It's like people being people pleasers.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I think like as a man, the idea that I have people pleasing uh, uh, tendencies feels very like, ugh, like I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
want to be that doesn't feel very manly to me, you know? And then having been in the military, you're a Marine, like for a Marine to have like people pleasing tendencies, it's almost like embarrassing, right? It's like, oh
Yeah.
shit. But at the same time, your entire military career is people pleasing.
Yeah.
Like
You do what you're told, right?
you
Because
do it.
what he told me was not unjust, unethical, or any egregious violation of any standing rules or anything like that. So I'm sitting on the bench in the cafeteria, waiting for my turn to talk to the S1, right? To figure out what we do next. And yeah. So that was emotionally, that was a very enlightening week for me. Because to give you more context, I was so stressed out on making the perfect decision coming out of the Marine Corps, as far as like, where are we going to live? What am I going to do for work? And that's why I sucked as a father and I sucked as a husband during that period of time. But dude, when I went through that whole week, right, I realized, like, dude, what's so beautiful about being a civilian is even when you make a bad decision. What I'm saying, like, for your life, I took a job I shouldn't have taken. I bought a house I shouldn't have bought. I bought a car I shouldn't have bought. The great thing is that you don't have to stick with that decision. You can quit and you can go find somebody else or find a different opportunity that's better suiting to who you are as an individual. And that's why I absolutely love being a civilian, because I can actually say no now. No,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not coming to work on Monday because I'm taking my daughter to her dental appointment. I'll be here and I'll be in late on Monday, or I'll come in on Tuesday, whatever. The point is, you can actually say no. You have control. And I feel like that's what a lot of people don't actually realize coming out of the civilian world. Nobody's going to tell me what I need to do for advancement, for promotion. How do I invest in my 401k? Should I even do that? How do I deal with like the benefits allocations for the business offers to me versus what I get from my pension and my VA disability? So like, there's a lot of stuff out here, but you have freedom of choice, and that's something I've never, outside of being in combat. I feel like you get a lot of choices. You have a lot of freedom in combat, and that sounds very, very weird to people. But hey, why did you move here? Nobody was shooting in this position, so I was like, this is the safe thing. That's why I moved from the exposed position. They're like, hey, good decision, keep moving. So like, you get a lot of freedom in combat, and that kind of went away because my last 10 years or whatever. But the point is, it's like, I'm not worried about making the wrong decision anymore.
Mm. Mm. That's beautiful. And you can change your mind.
Yeah, right. I don't want to do business continuity. I want to go be a fisherman. Go be a fisherman. Go. Like, you can
Yeah.
absolutely do that.
Yeah. I see a lot of people work through that where they go, it's like you can set a goal, like this is what I want to do, this is where I want to be in 10 years. And then you get 1 year into it, and you're like, I don't know if that's people will like keep following through on whatever goal they set, even though it's not the goal they want anymore. I'm like, what are you doing? And we're like, well, I have to follow through. I'm like, not
No,
really.
no, no, you don't. Right? Yeah.
No, you don't. I've gotten really good at quitting things.
I don't think I've ever heard it so beautifully put, Mike. That is amazing.
It's true.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. There was a time where I felt bad. I was like, oh, I'm a quitter. It's like, nah, man, I'm a fucking quitter. This is great.
yeah, yeah. This
Changed
is
my
not working
mind.
for
Like,
me.
I,
Right.
I, dude, there's when you set a goal and you go, oh, I want to go do this thing. You may have in your mind that it's actually something different. And then as you get closer to it, you go, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
This isn't what I wanted. I wanted something else, but maybe there's something, there's another route I can take.
Yeah, no, there's always a business. So there's always an aspect of me where I want to have my own business one day. I want to do my own thing. I was thinking about like, hey, I'll open up a civilian survival camp for civilians because I know like civilians nerd out on being thrashed like they're actually in the military, right? And they pay thousands of dollars to go through these experiences.
Maybe tens of thousands.
Yeah, maybe even tens of thousands.
People invite me to stuff. They're like, you want to go do this Hell Week thing? I'm like, nope.
I'm good.
I did it. Like, I don't know. I don't know who I would be proving that to, but you go
I'm not
for
paying
it.
for it. Like I got thrashed for free. Like I don't know. So I was like, hey, that's something I want to do. And I looked into it. I was like, well, I got to find the land. I got to have the space. Not only do I have to find the land, I have to find the appropriately labeled land for the zoning codes and building codes and like whatever the case may be. And dude, I looked into that. I was just like, and then I got to have like business insurance. I'm doing high hazard activities. So like, that's going to be, and I was like, dude, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
So
Are you familiar with Seal Fit?
No, Go Rock is the one that comes to mind.
Okay. Now, Seal Fit is run by Mark Devine. He was a commander, Navy SEAL, and he ended up. So he started like this, like mental toughness. He runs his own like Hell Week and stuff like that. He was doing it down in Encinitas, where I used to live in SoCal, and everything was going great until like once every 3 or 4 months he would run like a Hell Week in Encinitas, and guys would be running through the town with logs on their shoulders and shit.
I love it.
and the city finally was just like, this is getting obnoxious. Like, so he got shut down and they had to move it. And you're right. There's a lot of things like I said before, like as a business owner, you're exposed to all the decisions.
Yes.
Whereas when you have a job, you're exposed to a finite amount of decisions. And so it's a different game. It's a different game.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's also worth it. If you ever want to go that route, I'm here. Your brother's also a fantastic entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, he is. And I learned a lot of lessons from him. And he still teaches me every single day, but one day I will have it. I just haven't identified what I want it to be yet.
Yeah. Yeah, no rush. For real. Like no rush. Like make sense what you really want.
I'm like, wait, I'm only 43 years old. Like, cause I talk to like very senior people and they're like in their 60s and their 70s and they're still showing up to work every day. And I'm like, bro, what about, I got 30 years.
Yeah.
Shit out,
Yeah. Yeah. What was it like? I mean, you've referenced this a couple times. Sounds like the last couple of years you're in the Marine Corps, it was rough on the family. And I'm aware that a lot of guys, when they're in the military, and women too, they're gone a lot and their time is taken up. And then when you get out of the military and then you're home way more than you were before, was that easy? Was that difficult? Or what was that like?
I knew that I was punishing my family, and I don't like saying it like that, but that's the truest because I wasn't being present, right? So like by the time my kids woke up, I was already out of the house because I gotta go get my PT in. So by the time I'd come home, they had already eaten dinner and they were getting ready for bed, or maybe they were even possibly already in bed because somebody did something at 1700, which delayed me 3 hours from getting home. Right, it was pretty common. And my wife, she pulled me aside a couple of times and we had some hard conversations. And I was like, look, I wish I could show you something on the horizon here and say, look, all we got to do is get to that piece of land. I see the seagulls. I know we're close. I can't see. It's still foggy, right? But I know it's in that direction. And I tell her, look, I have no idea where I'm going, but just please trust the process. I refuse to fail. The consequences, the suffering that we are going through right now as a family because of my distraction with everything is short in comparison to once I'm out and I no longer am able to wear this uniform and the reality sets in that, look, I cannot be a victim, not as a husband, not as a father. Like, I've got to find success. I've got to find a way to at least maintain the standard of living of which my family's accustomed to. Mm-hmm. Right. And she's an amazing woman. 19 years. We just celebrated 19 years of marriage.
Wow.
Last week.
You're an anomaly.
Dude, I know. Cause
Congratulations.
It's been hard. It was hard, but she had the patience with me, just like, okay, go, and as soon as we get the job offer from Netflix, I was like, all right, baby, hey, look, transition, right? Conditions have been set, now because she was preparing for her, because it was going to be a change for all of us. She was preparing to possibly have to go work, possibly take a minimum wage job because, she's pursuing her goals and her dreams, but we might have to feed the family. So she's going through her own transition, but she's basically like keeping the house together as far as the kids, their medical appointments, their Gayle's failing at math. My son in whatever grade he was in at the time. Okay, get him a tutor, figure it out. And I would literally tell her, look, I need you to figure it out. You have free decision-making authority. I have now blessed you as a knight in the realm. Go forth and do good things, But it was just, it sucked. I'm not going to lie, man. It was hard. It was hard for those 18 to 24 months. But when I had the time and I had the space, when things were quiet at work, hey, let's go to the beach. Let's go. Let's take a trip. Let's go do something that's within our budget, within our time space, and just try to be present with each other.
Yeah. That's huge. I mean, the fact that you were able to say, I don't know where this is going. Please trust the process. And the fact that
I cannot see.
Dude. Oh man. I think I've had similar conversations like that with my fiance in the last couple years. Where she's like, "Where is this going?" And I go, "I don't know." I'm not even being in the military. We're just doing life, and I'm, managing 2 or 3 different businesses at a time. And she's like, "This is really what's happening?" I'm like, I don't know. I'd be lying to you if I told you exactly. I knew exactly what was going to be happening next, but trusting that process, and that's not always what our spouses want to hear.
No, it's not. People ask me today, hey man, where do you want to be in 10 years? I'm like, bro, I'm just trying to enjoy the moment right now. Right? I punished them for 2 years. I've been out for 2.5 years now. And Mike, it feels like, hey, Juliana, my daughter's struggling with math. Okay, hey, let's sit down and let's work on it together. Let's figure a way to make this all make sense. Or, English or whatever the challenges that they're having. I feel like I'm being a father for the first time, and one's 12 and the other one's 10. You know what I'm saying? And I basically became a part of their lives when they were 8 and 6 years old, respectively. So I feel great. And then also on the marriage front, it feels good to hey, baby, let's go grab some lunch. Let's go grab a coffee in the morning. The kids, we just dropped off at school. Let's go grab a coffee. My first meeting is not for another hour. So those things, and I still check in with my wife, right? I'm like, hey, listen, are we good with where we are? What do we need to change? What are you not getting? I always check in with her because I have my idea of where stability is. I want to make sure that it matches what her perception is, right? So we have to communicate, man, because of what I put him through for the last 2 years of my service.
Yeah. Man.
Yeah. So
that's
I'm not
beautiful.
chasing any more North Stars.
Yeah, you were calculated when you got out. You were clear on where you wanted to live. You knew how much money you wanted to make. You put more importance on the family. I know so many people get out and they end up still not seeing their family, still finding a job that is so demanding that they don't even get that. And then I think that's a lot of times where families break down is
Yeah.
they're waiting for things to change, and then someone gets out of the military and then they choose something that's just as demanding.
Yeah.
And it's and it might be because someone's avoiding, like, I don't know how to be with my family. So I'm gonna
That could
just
be it too, dude. It's easy to be a husband when you only see your wife for half a year.
I've
Because
got
you're
that
deployed.
on the copy on the website for the mission after. I was like, it's easy to be in a relationship and have a family when you're on deployment half the time. Try
Yeah.
being at
Yeah.
home. Try coming home every night. Like that's
Dude, there was
that can be harder. And I want to, just give you some praise around that of being able to be so not just adaptable in the career environment, but you're adaptable as a man, and you're adapting to being a good husband and father. And so I just really commend you for that. That's not many people can do that well. So
no, thank you for that.
that's
And
great.
unfortunately, divorce has been a part of my military career everywhere I went, right? And so like my first 6 years of service, divorce was not really ever really spoken about or a thing because we were in Hawaii. Literally, if you're not on deployment, you're on a different island, right? Only the spouse and the kids get to enjoy Hawaii. The husbands or whoever the active duty member is, they're the ones who are always traveling. But when I got to Camp Pendleton as a combat instructor for my I don't know what you were calling it. It's basically my special duty assignment. So non-deployable for 3 years. I'm going to go train Marines how to be infantrymen, and that's what I'm going to do for 3 years. The uptick in divorces was like excessive. Everybody all of a sudden was going through a divorce. I'm going through financial and relationship issues because, to your point, I get to come home every night.
Yeah.
Duty like once a month or twice a month, whatever you end up with, but I actually have to deal with this human being I've been sharing space with for like the last 6 years.
Yep. Yep. And
So yeah,
and she and the spouses, whether they're wives or husbands, the spouses aren't used to you being there.
right.
They've got everything dialed in. And then you come in and like, I want to help out.
Yeah,
And she may be like, get the fuck out of here.
yeah, yeah,
Like, I got this. You're messing up my flow, bro.
yeah.
So I saw that so much when I was in the Navy. It was just like guys switching to shore duty. You go from sea duty where you're never home and it's shore duty, and then it's just total chaos at home.
Right. Yeah. I think one of the things that worked in our favor is we didn't rush to have kids. So
Yeah.
for a lot of our relationship, it was just me and her.
Mm.
So and she called me out like one time, I came home like every American, every Marine, like I want babies, I want kids, I need to produce, right? She's like, wait a minute, we barely even know each other. So how about we spend some like we've been together at the time for like almost 10 years, and she's like, how about we just like make sure that this is actually what we want, like we need to spend time together first. And I was like, okay, I respect that, cool.
Wise. You got a lot of wisdom. Your wife has a lot of wisdom. There's no it's no mystery why you're experiencing success and happiness. So that's super cool. Anything you want to leave the audience with before we bounce?
I would say whatever you think you want to do, whatever leads you to the end of your military career, whether it's a medical retirement or a deliberate decision or an actual retirement, whatever the case may be, do not worry about why you exited the military because nobody's going to care out here, right? So I mentor a lot of veterans who are currently in the transition, and I always see that they put their awards on their resumes. I'm like, bro, nobody knows what a Legion of Merit is. They're not going to take the time to look it up. They know what a letter of appreciation is more so than they would a meritorious service medal. So like you need to gauge your audience. Like now, if you're applying to federal or you're applying to a military friendly organization and you're basically all working with vets, then yeah, sure, that stuff might mean something, but you really need to transition and you need to be a chameleon. You've got to be able to look at the new environment you're trying to be a part of, and then how can you mold yourself and prepare yourself for that experience, with the understanding that I would recommend that you fail fast and don't make too many financial obligations. What I mean by that is don't come out of the military and rush to buy a house. Don't come out of the military and buy a brand new, F-1500 truck or whatever the case is. Try to maintain your standard of living, be financially smart, because if you have to pivot, you don't want to be beholden to your next paycheck. You want to be able to pivot when you feel like when you've culminated or you've come to that awareness that where you are is not where you want to be. Don't let financial, handcuffs, for lack of better terms, be the thing that forces you to keep hating your life. There's a lot of freedom out here.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I don't know, a lot of times people I interview have like some type of social media following or whatever, but I don't think that's the case for you. Or maybe LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah, LinkedIn's the best place to find me. I'm not an Instagram influencer. Like I think I have like friends on Instagram that I don't even know. But no, LinkedIn's the best way to get a hold of me. I'm the only Gayle Anders with Netflix in my title. So
right on. We'll be posting all that stuff in the show notes. So, yeah, I guess give you a follow, see what you do. I don't know if you're active on there or whatever, but I really appreciate everything that you shared. There's a ton of good information here. I imagine people will want to go back and listen to this 2 or 3 times and take notes. So, excellent show.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about this. I love talking about this stuff. And I love helping other people that are following in my footsteps or their own footsteps.
Awesome. I guess we'll have to go grab a bite when I come to LA next.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Mission After. Before we wrap up, I want to remind you about our free resource, the 10 surprising military habits that are sabotaging your career and your life. This guide is packed with valuable insights to help you overcome common challenges faced by veterans transitioning to civilian life. Don't miss out on this opportunity to take control of your career and life. Head over to themissionafter.org to download your copy now. It's completely free and could be the game changer you're looking for. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your fellow veterans and friends. Your support helps us reach more people and make a bigger impact. Until next time, stay curious, stay intentional, and remember, your mission after service is just beginning.